Hi, everybody. Welcome to this short lecture on the elements of fiction. Um, I'd like to think of beginnings. And what are the beginnings of storytelling? I often think of the very beginnings of human history being interwoven with storytelling. Imagine a group of Neanderthals sort of gathered around the fire, and after maybe gnawing on their food and throwing out their bones, one person from the clan, can you guess? Yes, starts to tell a story. You'll never guess what happened to me today. Um, how was your day? Well, it was great. It was terrible. And we launch into stories. And I think whether we consider ourselves to be storytellers or not, we often make choices about what detail to emphasize, how to pace the story to build interest, and a whole editing process is engaged almost unconsciously of choosing, clarifying, enhancing, and inventing. So, if all this is true, um, and storytelling is just natural, and especially the short story, which is the form that we're going to be exploring in our class, why has it taken so long for the short story as a literary form to evolve? I think we can see that the short story always existed in oral tradition, but until the mass middle class literacy of the 19th century in the Western world, and magazines and periodicals abounded at this time, really the short story had no forum. And so it's when readers wanted short stories and writers who were um, typically novelists, suddenly discovered that they had a new literary form on their hands. So writers like Nathaniel Hawthorne of the 19th century, Edgar Allan Poe, they would try their hand at writing short stories. And by the end of the 19th century, like writers like Anton Chekhov would master the form. And Edgar Allan Poe once famously said that the short story you can understand what it is when or distinguish it from longer forms by saying that it's a story that you can read in one sitting. Now, one sitting and the amount of time we spend reading something, it might be different for each person, but I think you get Edgar Allan Poe's point. And I love the short story because it is very brief, it's intense, and oftentimes you really have to work to fill in the gaps of the story. So we'll be reading a couple of short stories this week, and we'll continue on with reading short stories in the ensuing weeks. Um, but just a few more slides concerning plot, and I'd like to ask you to understand elements of plot, elements of fiction, and then try your hand at applying some of these terms to a parable that we'll read together. So now, plot concerns causes and effects as well as the arrangements of moments in time. Plot creates a meaningful pattern out of the presentation of events, and it often relies on the rearrangement of chronological order. So sometimes stories will make use of flashbacks or flash forwards to add interest and drama to the story. And foreshadowing is when an author merely hints at what's to come, and it's only maybe upon retrospect, after we've read the entire story, that we recognize foreshadowing for what it is. Um, Plots usually involve at least one conflict, a struggle of some sort, and its resolution. And conflicts can be external or more psychological, more internal. Um, and there's a technical term I want to introduce you to. Um, it's called exposition. Generally, plot follows a five-part pattern. And exposition, which usually occurs at the beginning of the story, introduces the characters, their situation, and often a time and place. It also reveals some sort of conflict. The rising action is the conflict turning into something greater, something adding pressure to maybe the relationship, or there's a turning point or climax that evolves, um, into some sort of resolution. Um, and the final phases of the story just presents the outcome, which can be described in terms of falling action and conclusion. And at this point, all the actions of the story are fulfilled, and the situation that was destabilized at the beginning of a story either becomes stable once more or is replaced by a new, more stable situation. Um, And here's a helpful slide, just plotting out in visual form the five-part structure of plot.